So if you don't know, Little Nightmares is a series of horror adventure games, some survival horror aspects, it's got puzzles and platforming. This series is beloved by lots of people, and obviously for its really interesting lore and story. When I first played the game, like you're seeing in this gameplay back here, I didn't go very far. I didn't give the game enough time. Now I've played past that part I had been at before, but enough about me. This video is about Little Nightmares 3. So anyway, I looked at Little Nightmares 3's Steam page recently, and wouldn't you know, the reviews are mixed already. That's a little strange, don't you think? Well, I do so wonder why that is. Alright, enough showboating. So the general reviews of Little Nightmares is very positive, which that's referred to both the first and second game, and wait a minute, SpongeBob! Oh my fuck. The developers of Little Nightmares 3 aren't even the same as the other two games. Now then, let's talk about why Little Nightmares 3 is like this. I'll first go over this general review on Eurogamer that does go over this very well, but do believe me that I'm not using this as an only example or even a general example. There's a bunch I've got. Original developer Tarsier waved goodbye to its delightfully macabre horror series with 2021's Little Nightmares 2 passing the torch to Until Dawn studio Supermassive Games. For better or worse, Supermassive sticks mostly to the script, resolutely delivering more of the same. Keenly as new protagonists, Lo and Alone brave a series of vividly imagined new regions of the nowhere, and a story largely distinct from the dovetailing narratives of the previous games. I'm not going to explain the distinction. I think if you wish to know that, you should check for yourself. That said, there's this one part I want to get to, which is generally what I consider to be the meat and potatoes of this review. In terms of moment-by-moment action, it often feels a little flat. There's a lot of walking through empty, nondescript rooms, especially in the game's rather rote first half, and when the set pieces do come into play, they're often too predictable and pedestrian in design. You'll stealth across the foreground to avoid sightlines, you'll leap and slide as monsters give chase, but rarely do the sequences capture the imaginative choreography, the shivering menace, and oppressive tension of earlier games. Puzzles are particularly disappointing, distilling the series formula down to perfunctory busy work like block pushing, lever cranking, rather than anything more involved. That's particularly surprising given Little Nightmares 3 now accommodates two-player online co-op, yet despite the potential, Supermassive rarely takes advantage of its dual protagonists in interesting ways. Every now and then you'll encounter an obstacle requiring a specific character's unique ability. Occasionally they'll both need to interact with an item in tandem, but intricate teamwork is seldom required. It rarely reaches satisfying highs of previous games' puzzle design, and is never especially involving. Little Nightmares 3's unevenness is even further compounded by the fact it revives the series every frustrating tick, even managing to exacerbate some of them along the way. That means woolly controls, it means platform sections made infuriating by poor perspective choices, it means time-wasting checkpoints paired with badly signposted trial and error sequences and insta-death fails. Too often, Little Nightmares 3 plays out like a long quick-time event where you're left to guess which button you're expected to press in order to survive. Now, it's pretty bad when even a review by Eurogamer isn't impressed by your game. The only part I can say I experienced firsthand is the poor perspective platforming. I'm aware that's how the game is, and part of playing is adapting to that. I personally have zero issue with it. If anything, I'd say this guy pointing out the fact is a nitpick by definition, but that doesn't mean he's wrong. Now let's look at that particular review on Steam, because the most helpful review since Little Nightmares 3 came out is by this person on Steam. Jackson says, "First off, I really truly want to give this game a thumbs up, but I can't." And they go on to list pros and cons. Pros: what story is there is somewhat interesting and sort of engaging. Chase sequences were thrilling and made me laugh at some parts. The AI isn't the worst I've ever seen. I died more than it. Good character design, except for the final boss. Felt like a random body horror tag just slapped onto the design, and that was it. Cons: biggest one, the story feels vastly incomplete, with only 4 chapters in the base game, and the rest of the story is locked behind either the future DLC or the podcast and media outside of the game. If you've seen the trailer, you've seen nearly 3/4 of the game. Most of the game is a garbled mess lore-wise, and fully relies on the player to piece something together even if it's wrong. Those who haven't listened to the podcast, for example, won't know some lore behind one of the bosses. This lore is never mentioned in the game as far as I'm aware. The soundtrack didn't feel like it had any big moments, at least not that I noticed. Could be wrong. A bland track that if I wasn't paying attention to it, I wouldn't even have registered. The ambience is kind of a letdown. The graphics feel like they took a step back from the first 2 games. In 1 and 2, we had a central location to explore, one that forced an approach quality over quantity. The locations shown here felt like cardboard cutouts of a spooky setting. Why are there already so many DLCs for skins? It's a story game game, people came for more content, horror, and to be immersed in the world of borderline eldritch adults. You want skins? Fine. Make people earn them in-game or offer one big pack. Perhaps people might even say it's unfair to compare the qualities of this game to its predecessors, especially given the change of studios. To this I say, if you're going to make a beloved IP like Little Nightmares and give it the Overwatch or Marvel treatment, don't make any more. We don't want to be milked for our money. We don't want to have to go through trawling through distant media for the full story. And if you're not willing to put some cohesive effort in like Tarsier Studios did, then just stop. Now let's talk about this review. Maybe I agree with their take, but that's only because of the things I can personally verify. With that in mind, if you remember what they said about the story being locked behind DLC, this is technically true. However, according to the DLC page of the expansion pass, the story is not related to the main story and therefore doesn't matter. Whether that's true or not, we'll have to see in the future. However, it is true that you are paying $15 upfront for the expansion pass and that this game already has DLCs at launch is concerning in my opinion, because that definitely brings the evil of greed with it. The only thing you get right away is the skins. Chapter 1 of the expansion doesn't come out until April to June next year, which is a really long time to wait for that. And even more so is the second chapter, which isn't until October to December next year. This is an extremely bad way to launch a video game. They should have waited until they had the content ready. Usually expansion DLCs are thought of after the game sells, yet here they are already decided like they made something that's already amazing. That's a bad look in my opinion that only really represents greed. And I'd agree with Jaxine's sentiment here as well that Little Nightmares doesn't need skins, especially not for $15. That's just ridiculous. Especially when this game is already $40 fucking for 5 hours of gameplay roughly. I think maybe some really crazy good games would be worth that, but this game majorly missing the mark. I do believe 40 is an overcharge for a game without the content to provide for that payment. So wait for a sale on it, especially since the first and second games don't cost as much, but there's no denying the price went up on Little Nightmares 2 for only about an hour plus of gameplay or so. Little Nightmares, the first game, is $20, Little Nightmares 2 is $30, and Little Nightmares 3 is 40 buckaroos. Anyways, so let's move on to some other reviews just to show you that even in the positive side of things, people aren't happy with this game. RawGov says, I am a huge fan of Ellen 1 and Ellen 2. 1 was just immersive and it had some very scary moments and it was a lengthy game. Okay, if you think 4 hours is a lengthy game, then clearly you haven't played RPGs before. That's right, I said it, and your face is stupid. I don't even know what your face looks like, but it's stupid and you're a stupid head. Ellen 2 was beautiful and intricate in its story. 3 just felt short and incoherent. Yes, I get the abstract storyline of how a child is trapped in some kind of facility and he's made up an imaginary friend who gives him comfort, and I think the game was on par in terms of graphics and immersiveness, but somehow this just felt short and formulaic and incoherent. I'd still recommend it, but didn't hit the same spot for me as 1 and 2 did. The formulaic part and lack of feeling this was lengthy like the first is probably because of the very unengaging gameplay. But according to How Long to Beat, this game is longer than the first game, but as you can see, even someone who recommends this game had similar criticisms. Now let's read more. Forsaken says, Lackluster story with very minimal substance to the Little Nightmares series is known for. By the end, you can tell it's completely devoid of meaning. None of the bosses and enemies have reason or depth to their existence, they just appear. Only some of the bosses get fully resolved by the end of their chapters. It's mostly just running away and hoping the problem stops. There was some cool mechanic introductions, but they were vaulted as fast as they were introduced. The AI issues and bugs I've seen is unreal. In the middle of the chase, why not hold hands to slow you down? The boss is supposed to stun itself? Yeah, it will ignore that when it feels like it. You know that plank of wood blocking you? It is now extremely sturdy and refuses to break off the doorway. You made a mistake for a second and that's enough for you to fail and restart. TLDR, Ellen 1 and Ellen 2 are just infinitely better experiences. So kind of a lot to unpack here. For one, I feel like if you're one of those people that get upset when they make a mistake as outlined, well, by you yourself, a mistake is still your mistake. You have to adapt to the game. It's not the game's job to adapt to you, nor is it yours to play the game. Another thing I'm going to mention is how you said none of the bosses and enemies have reason, but if some bosses get resolved at the end of chapters, then they technically did have a reason. It's just contradictory. That's about all I can say though. I don't doubt him on the AI mistakes or the story considering what I know so far. Captain Backfire says, no reason for this game to be $40, very little content. I beat the game in 6 hours real time, and this included me going to the store and making a quick dinner. I did get stuck on a few more of the frustrating mechanics, hidden trapdoor under a really dark table, companion not moving into position for some of the puzzles. Easily could be completed in 3 hours if looking up puzzle solutions when stuck. Which, yeah, I'm in agreement. You can buy Dark Souls for $40 and get more time out of it. $40 is just too much for a 5-hour game average. Anyway, that's generally all I had to say about Little Nightmares today. To review, Little Nightmares 3 is a game made by different developers, and these developers missed the mark on what made Little Nightmares what it is. They sold skin DLC and additional chapters at launch, which which is just a stupid thing to do. Not to mention that the game is $40 for a lack of content, and gameplay that feels very lacking according to many people. My advice, wait for a sale on this one, guys, and don't support this money grubbing. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.